Greetings from the Goldmire Bridges spanning the horizons of maybe Mirrodin, where yes, Grist the Hunger Tide can be your commander. My name is John from the MTG Thoughtcast, and this is Pack It In, where we're going to be opening up a booster pack and getting as many cards as we can into your commander decks. Today we have ourselves Modern Horizons 2. It's Modern Horizons 2, the sequel nobody wanted, but everybody got. I do like the Modern Horizons sets. They obviously had their influence on actual constructed 60-card formats. Here we go again of not being able to open. There we go. You know, how many episodes has this been now where John... Ooh, I nicked that right out of the package. Whoopsies. How many episodes is this now where John struggles to open an actual booster pack live? Live booster reaction. Back to the point I was saying, though. The Modern Horizons sets have been very, very kind to a lot of us in deck brewing and construction. Obviously they had their pull on regular constructed play formats like Modern and Legacy and things of that nature, and I don't really have much to add in that regard as far as those are concerned, because those are formats I don't play. But as commander folk, there have been some fantastic pieces to pull from at all rarities across all three at time of filming of Modern Horizons. Who knows how far into the future you're watching this, there might be more Horizons, but this is the sequel. This is Modern Horizons 2. As far as the scale of the three of them, this one definitely had some very, very powerful stuff. Like, we all know Ragavan's a problem, but there's also all kinds of other stuff at Mythic. Urza Saga is in this set as well, the Evoke Elementals. So, like, we got some goodies that we could potentially look out for. So let's get started with our first card here, Battle Plan. 3 and a red for an enchantment. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature you control gets 2/0 until end of turn, and basic land cycling. This was if I recall, there's a card that's kind of like this. It's on a creature. I think it's called Battle Rattle Shaman. That's kind of the same thing, that on your combat, something else gets bigger, but just if you don't happen to need this down, it land cycles. And it's also an enchantment, so it's harder to remove than a creature. So if you're already doing Battle Rattle Shaman, here's a fun new friend for you. So shiny! It's precious. We want this in foil. That would make this joke even better if it was in foil. 2 and a blue for an Aura. It's an enchant creature. When it enters the battlefield, if you control a token, tap enchanted creature and then scry 2, and the enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. So yeah, so it's a claustrophobia. It's a I'm drawing a blank. No, not sleep. Sleep is something else. One of these, encrust, one of these ones that taps down a creature and keeps it tapped for as long as you control the enchantment. You just get the benefit of, if you happen to have any token, you also get a scry out of it. Very, very cool. We know blue is very, very good for their tokens, things like treasures and mirrors and clues and other stuff like that. Very fun. Oh, I apologize for the, white text on white retro frame. This has always been a really hard one to read or come across on camera or whatever, but we have here, it's called Blacksmith's Skill. It's a single white mana for an instant. Target permanent gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn, and if it's an artifact creature, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. I like this. I like the flexibility on this card. Is no matter what you end up targeting, a permanent, by the way, which is very, very cool. You can hit a land, you can hit a planeswalker, you can hit an enchantment, you could hit anything really, or just a plain old basic artifact. But you get just this added bonus if the permanent you're targeting is an artifact creature. So anything like, old school classic commander favorites like the Mirror Battlesphere or Hellkite. Steel Hellkite? Is that the thing? Yeah, Steel Hellkite. Those kind of things. And then any other artifact, whatever. Artifact token, golem, anything. I like this. This is very, very cool. If you're in white and don't have access to green for things like Tamiyo's safekeeping and things like that, it's a fun little piece that is able to protect anything down on your board. Funnel Web Recluse. 4 and a green for a spider with reach and morbid, that when it enters, if a creature died this turn, investigate. That seems fine. I prefer the cards with Morbid that trigger at each end step, which is why Morbid has always kind of been a very strange and weird keyword thing, is like, it reads the same mechanic that it checks for when something is died, but not every card with Morbid reads the same. Some of them are just like this, one shot that they do and enter, others that they check every end step. So that reads confusing for players. That's why I'm not a big fan of it, but as a whole, this is okay for a spider. It's kind of funny to think about, like, oh, the spider enters and needs to investigate, where did the creature go? It probably got eaten by the spider that's investigating. So figure that one out. Vermin Gorger. 1 and a black for a 2/2 vampire. Tap, sacrifice another creature. Each opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. That's not bad. It's like just like a one-shot Blood Artist-y kind of effect. Lets you just eat any creature. It is cool that it is just a tap, so it doesn't require mana or anything like that. And also not locked to sorcery speed. I kind of wish this maybe acted as like a tap ability that acted like maybe a smaller version of Village Rites, maybe, where like you can tap, sacrifice a creature, make everybody ding for 1 and draw a card. Maybe that may have been too strong, but as a whole, it's fine. Oh, speaking of bridges, we were talking about this earlier. This is Rustvale Bridge. These are very, very cool lands. They come now actually pretty standard in most of the precons, especially if a precon cares about artifacts in any capacity. But this one is Rustvale Bridge. This is the red-white one. It is an artifact land, comes in tapped, it's indestructible, and it makes red or white. And there's a whole cycle of 10 of these across all of the 2-color pairs. I would love to see more versions like this, maybe for 3-color. I don't know if maybe a 3-color indestructible land would be too terribly strong, but these are very, very neat. They, A, are very, very practical, that they can stay on your battlefield and just come in as like triggering an artifact entering, or just being an artifact for an artifact count, something like Improvise or Affinity, any of that kind of stuff. But all the same sort of degeneracy kind of tricks that you can do with some of the old artifact lands. I think like Darksteel Citadel, those effects that you can do with cards that throw 1/1 counters or enchant an artifact and turn them into a creature. If something like this naturally has indestructible, that makes those effects very, very hard to remove. Like an old classic was the Ensoul artifact from back in the day. You would throw that onto a Darksteel Citadel, and you would just accidentally into an indestructible 5/5. So these bridges work really, really well like that. If you need to play tapped dual lands, you might as well play the ones that are indestructible. Duskshell Crawler. 1 and a green for a 0/3 insect that when it enters, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, which can be itself, and each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has trample. So just another one of these. This is cool. We've seen this kind of effect on a bunch of cards before at an assortment of mana values. And a really, really good one that I like is called Pridemalkin. It's a 3 mana. I believe it came from one of the Jumpstart sets, but its base power and toughness, I want to say, is like a 1/1 or a 1/2 or something to that degree. So this one's a pretty neat trade-off here, that you can get this effect down for cheaper, and if you throw the counter onto something else, you got this defensive wall. Though you could even put the counter on itself and you end up with a 1 mana 1/4 that helps block relatively well, that allows your other creatures with trample to keep going in for combat damage. So I like the flexibility on this one. It's also an insect, so if you're playing bugs, there's a good bug for your bug friends. Well, again, we joked about Grist earlier. Wave Sifter. This is a good fish, even though it's an elemental. 3 green and a blue for a 3/2 elemental. Flying. When it enters, investigate twice, and evokes for green, blue. Definitely this is not a Muldrifter, just to throw that out the gate. But this is cool that for 2 mana puts 2 artifacts into play, and you can still do those evoke-y kind of tricks. Like with this, where like if it comes in, the triggers on the stack to sacrifice it, you can blink it or recur it or cancel the trigger some capacity. Yeah, it's fun. I really, really like it. Oh boy, a classic, Ornithopter of Paradise. Again, has been like the bridges where this has been showing up in pretty much every precon now, fairly regularly, excuse me. 2 colorless mana, or 2 generic, I should say. A 0/2 artifact creature, Thopter, flying, and it taps to make 1 mana of any color. Great, easy, super simple to understand. It's a flying blocker, makes mana of any color. Classic. Feast of Sanity. 3 and a black for an enchantment. When you discard a card, Feast of Sanity deals 1 damage to any target and you gain 1 life. This is very, very fun if you're doing anything that cares about discarding your own cards, or you're doing wheels, or you have anything else down on board that allows you to discard a card for an effect of some kind. This just gives you added bonus, along with being able to shoot any target as well. You can hit down creatures for this. You just like, oh, dump this card to Madness, dump this one down to, I don't know. Ooh, interesting synergy, actually, by the way. If there is a creature that's got a ward cost of discarding a card, now you get to have a benefit for also paying the cost to somebody else's card as well. That's very, very cool. I didn't think about that up until just right now. That's a fun little, you could surprise somebody like that. Sweep the Skies. Blue, and X for a sorcery with Converge. You make a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying for each color of mana spent to cast this spell. Converge is very, very fun. It's a rewarding mechanic for playing a variety of different colors. Not quite so much Domain, as Domain is caring about your land types. This one just simply cares about the colors of mana that you can produce, which is achievable for decks that aren't necessarily doing all 5 colors. You know, every precon nowadays, or every deck just in general, we love playing Exotic Orchard. 9 times out of 10, that ability to make an off color from one of your opponents doesn't necessarily matter, except for something like this, where if you're naturally just a blue deck and you've got, say, Exotic Orchard, Chromatic Lantern, and Fellwar Stone out, fantastic. If you have an opponent that's got a variety of different colors in their options, congratulations, you can play a blue spell that filters 4 or 5 different colors of mana into it. I wouldn't say this is an all-star, but there are some very interesting corner case scenarios where you could just make a whole bunch of tokens out of nowhere. Clattering Augur. 1 and a black for a 1/1 skeleton shaman. It can't block, enters the battlefield, you draw a card and lose a life, and then for 4 mana, returns it from your graveyard to your hand. It's a very, it's a play sort of unlike the ability from Reassembling Skeleton that also just, I mean, Skeleton is reassembling one is definitely better than this because you can just constantly keep recycling it as a chump blocker and then returns immediately back to play. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this one. It's quite slow, even with the ability to draw a card when it enters. I'm not, it's a little too slow for me. This is one of my favorites as far as like a classic, is like the reprints that they did for this set here, they brought up into Modern. Millikin is a particular favorite here. 2 mana for a artifact creature construct. Tap, mill a card, add colorless. So it's a mana dork that can also just keep fueling your graveyard. Just clean, simple. I like it. Comes down relatively early, blocks well, blocks these tokens anyway. Very fun. Our rare is Obsidian Charma. 3 and double red for a 4/4 dragon. Costs 1 less for each land your opponents control that can produce colorless. Flying, and when it enters, destroy target non-basic land an opponent controls. And they don't even get to recycle that either. That land is just gone. So if your opponent is doing any kind of like non-basic land shenanigans of some kind, or they've got some really good utility pieces, that's the purpose of a dragon like this here, is like you punish them for having an assortment of utility lands down in play, and then this just comes in and just bang, bang, bang. And then obviously once it's down, it's very blinkable, reanimatable. You can keep doing that over and over again, depending on how many non-basic lands your opponents have. We do have a foil in here. This is Thorax Canticle, I want to say that's called. I probably spelled that wrong or mispronunciated that, but that's okay. 3 and a black for a sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a card from it. That player discards that card. Then they discard a card at random. These, I think we've gone over this before. Hand disruption cards like this, especially for Commander and at this mana cost, Not going to be incredible for any kind of deck. Even the decks that want your opponents to be discarding cards, discarding at random is definitely a huge benefit to that. But again, at 4 mana, you probably have better stuff to do. And our last token in here, or just card, is just a Thopter. A very decent selection to pick from here as far as things that are playable. Of what we have in here, I definitely think the easiest to include is going to be Ornithopter of Paradise, as has pretty much been making waves in every pre-constructed deck since this set launched. Outside of that, though, I do, like I talked about, really like Milliken. If you are doing a self-mill style strategy, just being able to just naturally get that as you produce mana that keeps your game plan going while just naturally giving you fuel into your graveyard. And apart from that, again, hard to see down over here with the white text on the retro frame, but Blacksmith's Skill is also just a very, very underutilized, very cool utility piece to be able to have single spot protection for any style of permanent, and then just happens to also be a bonus if you are playing artifact creatures. And that will do it for our pack today here on Pack It In. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you are enjoying, and we'll see you all again next time for our next booster pack. Goodbye!